He was Hollywood's most famous bachelor, charming, untouchable, impossible to lock down. For 2 decades, George Clooney played by one rule: never fall in love too deep and never get married again. But when one woman walked into his life, that rule shattered. And what followed was the kind of transformation no one saw coming. Because the real story of George Clooney's love life isn't about playboys or fame. It's about why the man who had everything kept running from the one thing he wanted most. Before Amal, there were dozens. Actresses, models, waitresses, co-stars. All beautiful. All temporary. The press loved him for it. He wasn't the cheating type. He wasn't scandalous. He was just emotionally unavailable. And that made him iconic. He was the guy who'd take you to the Oscars and ghost you by Christmas. But it didn't start that way. It started with a woman he did marry long before the world was watching. Talia Balsam, an actress, his first wife, his first heartbreak. They married in 1989. It was fast, quiet, and ended in 4 years. Clooney would later say, "I probably, definitely, wasn't someone who should have been married at that point." But Talia told a different story. Behind the scenes, George struggled with pressure, insecurity, distance. He wasn't famous yet, but he was already slipping away. After the divorce, he made a vow. Never again. Not because he didn't believe in love. Because he didn't trust himself to survive it. In the year 1994, air explodes. Clooney becomes a sex symbol overnight. Offers porn. So do women. Kelly Preston, Renee Zellweger, Krista Allen. Brief, intense, fleeting. But every time it started to feel real, he'd vanish. Krista Allen stayed the longest. 6 years. But even she admitted in interviews, he was present, but not available. The press called it a lifestyle. Friends said it was fear. And then came Sarah Larson, a Las Vegas cocktail waitress who made it all the way to the Oscars. But after the red carpet photos came silence. Then a breakup. What went wrong? Clooney never said. Larson claimed she was blindsided. Next came Elisabetta Canellis, the Italian TV host. She gave interviews. She spoke of love. She hinted at marriage. And that's when Clooney pulled away. She said, "George and I were a couple until June 2011. It was a relationship respected by me and by him." But behind that politeness was devastation. Because she thought she was different. But no woman was ever different. Then came Stacy Keibler, former wrestler, glowing in public appearances, always smiling. Everyone thought she'd be the one. And for 2 years, she almost was. Until one day, just like the others, she was gone. No drama, just silence. Why did he keep running? Why did he date women he knew he'd never marry? Some say it was control. Others say it was something much deeper, a man terrified of repeating his first mistake. Because while the world saw a silver-haired charmer in Armani suits, the real George Clooney was more private than people realized. He lived on a quiet estate in Lake Como. He avoided social media. He kept his family, his home, and his politics far from the women he dated. Love was a role he played well, but rarely off-camera. His best friends? Julia Roberts, Brad Pitt. But his real companion was solitude. That's why when he met Amal Alamuddin, everything changed. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't trying to be famous, she already had power. Amal was a Lebanese-British human rights lawyer. Fluent in 3 languages. She defended war victims, advised international courts, and barely blinked at celebrity. When she met Clooney in 2013, she didn't swoon. She challenged him. She talked politics, justice, legacy. And Clooney, who had dodged intimacy for 20 years, fell fast. He proposed after just 6 months. No red carpet, no headlines, just candles, a home-cooked meal, and a nervous George fumbling with a ring. What did she see in him? What did he see in her that made him give up the one thing he swore he'd protect? His freedom. The wedding happened in Venice, 2014. George wore a tux, Amal wore custom Oscar de la Renta. The whole city stopped to watch. It wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a transformation. He sold his bachelor mansion. He gave emotional interviews. He looked lighter. In 2017, they had twins, Ella and Alexander. He was 56. Friends said they'd never seen him like this. Calmer, softer, present. He wasn't running anymore. But that didn't mean the ghosts had left. The truth is, George Clooney didn't fear love. He feared loss. He watched his parents' marriage dissolve. He lived through a failed marriage at 28. He saw fame destroy relationships all around him. So he built a wall. Date but don't love. Love but don't commit. And if you commit, make sure it's temporary. But Amal didn't ask him to be anyone new. She just didn't need him to be anyone at all. And in that, he finally found a kind of love he couldn't outrun. One that didn't threaten him. One that didn't shrink under fame. One that challenged him to stay. So why did George Clooney give it all up for one woman? Because after decades of dating, fleeing, and faking it, she was the only one who never asked to be chosen. And that's the kind of love that doesn't end in silence. Comment, share, and subscribe for more alluring content that brings scattered stories together to form one story, one layered, providing unforgettable piece at a time.